Good evening and welcome to the PSGL round 2 of this PlayStation F6 Championship. Takes us to countryside, that is Silverstone. I'm Tom Kent in the commentary box. Alongside me is a good mate of mine, that is Jackson. How are you, my man?
Hello, I'm doing well. Looking race, hoping for more drama like we had last week.
Yes, absolutely, and it was quite a dramatic one last week, particularly in the closing stages where Trasmike and the Mercedes of Davey came together, which resulted in Ischite taking the victory on the penultimate lap of the race, or it took the lead on the penultimate lap of the race, and would go on to win ahead of Rafa and Kart Racer in third place. So it was quite a different result to how we anticipated it. So could we be in for another one of those kind of events here tonight then, Jackson?
Silverstone's definitely could be the sort of track where that could happen. I don't think any of us were expecting this day long. But at stages like he was sort of just about clinging on to the top guys, maybe sitting back in case of an incident like what ended up happening. So I think Silverstone, it has some aspects to the lap with many DRS zones around it. It does allow us to have another very close race like last week, which would again allow us to have these drivers, obviously if they're close, more chance of an incident, more chance of some drama. So I think it's quite possible we see a similar sort of race. Hopefully with a more sort of fairer fight for the win in the end. But I'm hoping it should be an exciting race, and this track usually produces great racing, so I see no reason why it shouldn't today.
Yeah, and I think we're going to be in for another breathtaking event here at Silverstone, most certainly. So rundown on the Drivers' Championship, well, considering we've only just done one round so far, Ischite leads the way on 16 points, and it's Rafa in second on 12, Kart Racer in third on 10. And yes, the point system is slightly different in the PSGL in comparison to real-life Formula 1, but the top 10 still score points. And the driver who got the fast lap was a driver outside of the top 10, which was Jonas, so he didn't get a point for that, unfortunately. But we're hoping for better luck, which will have to be next week because he's not around tonight. And the other full-time drivers who are also not around are Chiquito and Lewis. Now, those replacing him are Trasmike in the Aston Martin, Rafa is in place of Jonah in the Haas, and Chaz in place of Lewis in the Williams. We've just found out, now had begun that Mucoletto, who would be in the Alpine, isn't around due to personal circumstances. So it could well be just the 19 drivers involved in tonight, unless we can get a late reserve being called in to take Mucoletto's place. But even if it is 19, we should still have some brilliant action on our hands. You can see drivers beginning to ready up now. So Silverstone, what do you know about this racetrack then, Jackson? Because it's changed a lot, the configuration itself, over the years. But is the current configuration the best layout you've seen?
I would say so in terms of racing. Of course, some of the classic layouts really sort of, they got the bonus of nostalgia, I suppose is the best way to say. There's some iconic moments in Formula 1 that have happened on some of the older corners of the circuit. So I think in terms of for modern day Formula 1, this is the best layout that they've had. I think it's a shame that they didn't keep some of the old layouts up to the standard, because I think that could have been interesting, especially in a year like 2020 when we had some alternative layouts brought to some circuits. I think it would have been interesting to go back to an old layout, but sadly they're still there, but they're not up to Formula 1 sort of level anymore. But yeah, I think this layout, it does produce some great racing, some hard braking zones, some sort of fairly long straights, and a couple of DRS zones around the lap, which allow these guys to follow really closely. And I mean some iconic corners along the way, which have seen their fair share of drama over the years.
So yeah, I would perfectly agree, and it's been a lovely circuit. I mean, it's different. I do miss that bridge section of the racetrack, that fast right-hander, which we've seen a lot of drivers go through. I mean, obviously there's been accidents there in the past, not just in Formula 1, but in other series, like in British touring cars and all that. But it has produced some brilliant racing, particularly that Wellington straight, where we've seen some race-deciding moments, particularly in 2012, where Mark Webber overtook Fernando Alonso round the outside into Brooklands. That was a brilliant overtake, to see Mark Webber going on to take what proved to be his final Formula 1 victory back then. Now, the Silverstone circuit is 5.891 kilometres long. There's 18 turns, and the race lap record, is currently held by Max Verstappen in his Red Bull RB16 in 2020.
Yeah, this race seen its fair share of good races, as you say. In recent years, especially in real life Formula 1, we've seen some quite classic moments and races in general. Of course, Max Verstappen's missed his mixed past here at this circuit. Of course, back in 2020, in that very hot 70th anniversary Grand Prix, taking the win on that date. Equally, look at 2021 with a collision with Lewis Hamilton. I think these guys will be careful today, and I think, whilst of course these real-life events realistically have no real effect on what happens in league racing, I think mentally some of these drivers will see some of the incidents and some of the strategies that are played out in real life. For example, the incident at Cops, and they'll maybe think twice about making a move in a certain place, and equally may think differently about defending certain moves. So I think it would be interesting to see if we have any similarities between real-life races around this circuit and this race today, because it's a track that, as you said, it's just so iconic that, I mean, the corners here, I think everyone could drive Silverstone, lap Silverstone in their head. It's just one of those tracks that everyone knows so well, and I'm looking forward to seeing these guys take to the circuit, especially in qualifying. These cars on the absolute limit through some of the very high-speed corners here, especially with these 2021 cars. They're not as comfortable as they were in previous years. They have to be on the limit, but equally, it's easier to step over that limit these days. So it's going to be interesting to see how the cars perform, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
I'm very much looking forward to it as well. And for those who are watching for the first time, do make sure you click that all-important like button and subscribe button as well. We do so that you are notified of all the races that are happening in the PSGL, not just in this race, but also in the likes of F1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 15 divisions in the PlayStation ladder, although I think only the top 8 divisions in PlayStation are being broadcast for this season, along with most of the tiers in the PC ladder as well. But at least keep yourself right up to date with all the standings and all the action that is happening on the PSGL YouTube channel. We've reached just over 12,700 subscribers at the timing of recording, so thank you very much to all those who have tuned in and subscribed to the channel that has been going on since the days of F1 2010. I don't know how old you were back then, Jackson, but it doesn't feel too long.
I can't remember those days much, to be honest, but yeah, it's a great history here in PSGL, so it's going to be interesting to see. Of course, we write a new chapter in the history today, and hopefully it'll be a positive one that we look back on later in the season and say, oh, what a great race that was. But equally, we may look back at this race later in the season and say, oh, that's where this driver won or lost the championship, because it's only round 2. Right now, we realistically have no idea who's going to be champion at the end of the year. We can definitely take a guess, but the chance of those guesses being especially accurate is quite low. But I think there's a good chance we could perhaps look back at this race later in the season and say, this driver lost out on a few points on this day, and that's where they lost the championship. So it could be very interesting. I've got to keep an eye on absolutely everyone, especially at this point in the season. There's no drivers at this point that are above the rest in terms of their performance, because we've only had the one race. Drivers that are good at Portimao may not be good at Silverstone, so it's going to be exciting to see how things change, and perhaps if we see a new face up at the front of the field.
Absolutely so, and there will be some drivers out there that may feel that the result they had in Portimao will be one of those anomalous occasions. Just ask Jonah and Trasmike. They'll be hoping to bounce back in the near future, as Van der Brugge is coming through, and he's just training around the Silverstone circuit through Cops. And just to make you aware of the calendar for this season, we've already done Portimao. Today is Silverstone. In a week's time, we go to Monaco and then Paul Ricard on the 14th. And then we take a mid-season break. We go to Hungary at the end of the month, followed by Austria in March, and then Saudi Arabia for round 7. Belgium and Netherlands will round off the sort of March, beginning of April period. Then we go to Brazil for round 10, Mexico City for round 11, followed by Singapore on the 25th of April, and then it's Austin on the 2nd of May. And then we take another break before we return for the final doubleheader of Imola on the 23rd of May. So it's a 15-race season, just like it was in the previous campaign. And Van der Brugge has exceeded track limits, so we'll come away from him. Ishchik, last week's winner on the medium compound. Let's see how he gets on, and feel free to take us on a lap here, Jackson.
Yeah, here we go. He is starting his lap. Well, he's going through the first section lap now, on a bank lap to start off with, but going through Brooklands and exiting this segment of the racetrack. It's an important part of the racetrack, and it has multiple different lines through here. It's quite a long sort of complex of corners, so different drivers prefer different lines, and they now make their way down towards the famous Cops corner. Gonna turn in, and let's see how much he lifts. Only a tiny lift for medium tyres, but there's the snap, and that's what happens. But somehow keeps it invalid there. Keeps it valid, and survives that, and makes his way into Magnus Beckett here, and looks to be still pushing hard. So he makes his way out of this complex of corners, through Chapel now, down the hanger straight, gonna do all he can to just to focus on the next couple of corners ahead of him. Not long before the end of the lap, he's in sector 3, out through Stowe. A lot to run up at this corner. It's fairly blind on exit, so you've got to be careful of the track limits. Now in to the Vale chicane, gets the nose in, nice apex on the first of the pair, and again on the second, nice and clean, to make his way through the final corner now, across the line, and goes purple, of course, only first driver to settle that, and it is a 127.3, but on the medium tyres I expect to see that one beaten.
Yep, well, at least he's still ahead of Jasak, who's gone second on a 127.9 in the AlphaTauri, so there's a lot of time still to be found by him. We are expecting the lap times to be very, very close. It is F6 after all, which is run about the middle of the PlayStation ladder in the PSGL, so don't be too surprised to see the drivers within probably a full second of each other or something like that. We've got 17 in the lobby for tonight. There are a few drivers missing, of course, as Hershey has spun out on the XF Cops. What's happened?
Looks like it's been a mistake there for the Aston Martin driver. And we saw on Ischak's lap that little snap that happened, and if you turn off the reaction time that Ischak has, or if you perhaps overcorrect it, you're making a quick sort of journey towards the barriers, because I mean, if you go off a Cop's corner and you don't manage to save it, that is a session ender right there. It's not a corner that you can have a small accident at, so we have to assume that he's had some sort of mistake going through that corner, which is easy to do. But yeah, it's a shame to go out so early in the session, especially when the laps at this stage don't really mean too much. But at the moment, it's Kart Racer. The top of the timesheets on the medium tyres are very impressive. Lap time 126.8. Kart Racer for me is going to be someone to keep an eye on. Had a pretty dreadful qualifying session last week as Davey goes to the top now on the softs. But Kart Racer messed up in qualifying, didn't get a lap until the end. It was low on ERS. It sort of all went wrong for him. He was lucky to get any lap in at all. Went for the alternative strategy, and in the end managed to take home a third place, which is an incredible recovery from where he started. So I'm going to keep an eye on him today to see if he can qualify well, which already it's a pretty solid lap on the mediums, and quite possibly could get him higher on the grid than he was last week. If he can sort of have the pace he showed last week and qualify well, he could certainly be in the fight for the win, as Fruitful goes to the top of the times.
Yep, so Fruitful top by a tenth of a second over Davey in P2, who's managed to displace Kart in the process. Michelizzi fourth for Alpine on the softs. Then it's Chazza in fifth on the mediums, Ischak sixth on the mediums, and Link seventh on the mediums. There's still a number of drivers yet to post a lap time. Bottle is one of them, who's making his way through Maggots and Beckett's. There's an Alpine ahead, so he's got to hope that he doesn't get held up by him, which is unlikely they will do so. So the Alpine stays out of the way, and Bottle makes his way through sector 2, 1 minute 3.2, which is not the quickest that we're going to be seeing in this session. So Bottle at the moment, who did not compete last week, I don't believe. Just looking back on the championship standings, and it doesn't look like he has.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, he did actually.
Like he did race. Yeah,
he did race last week, so I do take my word back. But it was outside the points anyway for Bottle, so we're hoping for better luck here. Third fastest for him, 1 minute 26.8, and that is a couple of tenths slower than what Fruitful had produced a moment ago. Chazmike on a fast start, considerably quicker than what Bottle has done, so we could be seeing the first or the fastest lap time of this session so far, Jackson, as Chazmike makes his way through Stowe.
Gets it into both apexes nicely now through Club Corner. Gets it off across the line. Where's this lap time going to put him in? It is to the top of the timesheets there. 2 temps clear of the field. Chazmike goes first, and that is a great lap for the Aston Martin driver. And is looking in a pretty strong position so far in the session, and has set down a lap time that perhaps isn't going to be easy to beat.
It's most certainly not going to be easy to beat, and there is the Mercedes of Jagershan, who's one of those yet to post a lap time. He's on the medium compound. It's saying it's the softs on there, but I'll put the correct tyre compound on so you know which tyre Jagershan is on. It shows you on the top right hand corner of your screen anyway, but Jagershan is coming through Beckett and then through the King of Chapel over the second sector. It's of 1 minute 3.2. He's on the mediums, remember, in comparison to Trustmike, who is on the softs, so there's definitely still some time in hand, of which Jagershan is leaving on the table for when he goes for a run on the soft compound, if that is what he decides to do. So Jagershan coming through Vale, and now Club, onto the Hamilton straight. Where is this going to put the Mercedes? It's a 1 minute 26.9, and it's good enough for 8th fastest.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid lap on the medium tyres, so currently quickest for the medium tyre runners, so that is an impressive lap for him. Half a second off the quickest time it said on the soft tyres. Got a yellow flag out on the track at the moment. I believe that is a Williams car, or I believe that could be Jake Marsh, and it is. Jake Marsh had some struggles last week in Portimao, had some incidents in the race, had some other issues as well. But currently sitting third at the moment, just 3 tenths off the top time. It's not a bad recovery, and I think it's going to be important for Jake in this session and in this fresh new season. You find yourself behind and you lose the motivation. So I think it's going to be important for Jake and for several other drivers that had a tough first round, or if they missed the first round, to try and bounce back today. And it'll be interesting to see who rises to that challenge, or who perhaps falls down a bit more.
So Thunderbrook is someone coming through. Just saw a little bit of a glitch there, so just ignore that for now. Thunderbrook in the Haas, who is coming through. He had a good time in Portimao, actually. Coming home in a fine 7th place, which has seen him move obviously up the order, because we've had the first race of the season, but it's still a reasonable start to his championship charge as he crosses over the line for 126.7, and it's good enough to move him up to 5th place, and he's 3 tenths behind the fastest man, that is Trusmite. Kart racer, who is on the soft compound, Jackson. He did his previous run on the mediums, and he's about to come through sector 2 right now, and it's a 1 minute 2.8, and it's nearly 4 tenths up from before, so I think we could potentially see him going fastest at this rate. There is a Ferrari ahead of him that will stay out of the way. He's coming through Vale, but I think Kart Racer's got enough of a gap ahead of him to complete this lap without any trouble. So he's coming over the line now, and it's a 126.3, and he does go fastest by just under 400ths of a second. Tamo in the McLaren, it's not going to be a representative time. He only goes 15th, but at least it's a time on the board. So there's definitely more time on the table for him to find than that. Ischik, last week's winner, currently 13th on the medium compound. He's on the softs this time, 3 tenths up from before through the first sector. He's about to make his way through sector 2, through Copse Corner, I should say. So he's got a bit to go before we see a clocked time at the second time beam, which will be on the exit of Chapel. He'll ideally want to be in the high 1 minute 2s, if not quicker than that. And he is actually in the high 1 minute 2s. Not the fastest we've seen by this stage, but this could put him in the frame of most certainly being on the second row of the grid. Ischik coming through Stowe Corner. There's an Alfa Romeo ahead of him, which will stay out of the way for sure. So Ischik does not need to worry about that. Through Vale, and now Club. Where is this going to put the Red Bull driver over the line? It's a 1 minute 26.4, goes third. Nicely done there by Ischik.
We have had an off during that lap. It was Tamo who's had an off at Copse Corner. Looks like he survived it. Seems to have avoided any contact with the barriers, and the wing looks fine as well on the car, so it looks like he may have more of a slide than a crash. But still, not ideal for Tamo. Funnily enough, he's still improving on his best lap, which just goes to show how poor his first effort was. But I believe that may have been an improved lap time for the order. It was that David that's jumped up a little bit. I believe it was. He's gone up into 2nd position in the Mercedes car, so an impressive lap there. So he's brought the gap down by a little bit, but still only